Welcome everyone, it's Laura Jacques-Gilmour with your weekly collective card pull using my Remembering You Oracle deck. This reading is for the energy of August 18th to the 24th. As always, just notice what stands out for you and trust what resonates. I created this deck to help you reconnect with your own inner knowing. It came through my own process of remembering who I was underneath all the roles, patterns, expectations, and old stories I've been carrying. When I use these cards, I'm not using them to tell you what to do or to predict your future, and I'm definitely not using them to replace your own intuition. For me, the cards are more like a mirror. They give language to what your body, your heart, and your own inner knowing may already be trying to show you. This week, I'm working with 3 questions to help us look at the energy of the week as a collective. We'll look at what might be asking for our attention, what we might be ready to recognize about ourselves, and what might support us in trusting ourselves as we move forward. The first question was, what energy is asking for our attention this week? Before I pulled the card, the word that came through for me was stillness. That felt like an invitation to slow down and create enough quiet to notice what might be going on underneath all the noise. Sometimes we can become so busy doing, thinking, planning, or trying to figure things out that we don't give ourselves enough space to hear what we are really feeling. Then I pulled the card Honesty. I love how these two work together. Honesty asks us to be willing to see ourselves clearly, not from a place of criticism or judgment, but from a willingness to acknowledge what's true for us right now. And maybe stillness is what gives us the space to do that. When everything becomes a little quieter, you might begin to notice something you've been avoiding, a feeling you haven't wanted to acknowledge, something you want that you haven't allowed yourself to admit, or maybe something simply doesn't feel right anymore. You don't necessarily have to do anything with that information immediately. Maybe the first step is simply being willing to hear it. This week, maybe ask yourself, where am I being called to be more honest with myself? Our second question was, what might we be ready to recognize about ourselves that we haven't fully acknowledged? Before I pulled the card, what came through for me was our individuality, the part of ourselves that make us who we are. Sometimes we spend so much time adapting to the people and expectations around us that we lose sight of what feels right for us individually. What you value, what you want, how you naturally move through the world, what matters to you. Then I pulled the card Alignment. This feels like such an interesting card to receive with individuality. Alignment is about living in a way that feels connected to your values, your truth, and who you really are. And that's going to look a little different for each one of us. Something can be completely right for someone else and still not be right for you. A choice can make perfect sense on paper and still feel wrong in your body. Or you might find yourself continuing down a path simply because it's what you have always done or what other people expect from you. Recognizing your individuality means giving yourself permission to notice those differences. Not because your way is better than someone else's, but because it's yours. Maybe ask yourself, what would bring me into greater alignment with who I am right now? Our final question was, what might support us in trusting ourselves as we move forward? Before I pulled the card, what came through for me was our inner knowing, our intuition. And with that came another message. Make peace with what comes through. Stop fighting what your intuition is telling you. Surrender to your own inner knowing. Then I pulled the card Courage. And I think these two belong together beautifully. Sometimes we think the difficult part is hearing our intuition. Maybe we already hear it more often than we realize. The harder part can be accepting what it's telling us. Because sometimes what we know within ourselves asks us to make a choice we weren't expecting, to speak honestly, to honor a need, to say no, to take a step when we don't know exactly where it will lead, or simply admit something to ourselves that changed how we see a situation. That takes courage. Courage doesn't mean you have to know exactly what comes next, and it doesn't mean you have to make some enormous change today. Sometimes courage is simply deciding that you are going to stop arguing with what you already know. Maybe ask yourself, what is one brave step I'm ready to take based on what I already know within myself? There's something else I noticed when I looked at this week's reading. What came through for me before I pulled each card wasn't exactly the same as the card itself. Stillness led to honesty. Our individuality led to alignment. Our inner knowing led to courage. It feels like each card added another layer to what came through first. And when I look at these three cards together, honesty, alignment, and courage, there's a really clear progression in this week's reading. Stillness gives us enough space to become honest with ourselves. Honesty helps us recognize what is genuinely aligned with who we are as individuals. And once we recognize what we know to be true for ourselves, courage helps us begin to honor it. Maybe this week isn't about finding more answers. Maybe it's about creating enough quiet to hear the answers that are already there. Being honest about what you notice, recognizing what feels aligned with you, even if it looks different from what someone else would choose, and having the courage to trust what you know. You don't have to figure everything out this week. Maybe you're simply being invited to become still, listen, and stop fighting what you already know. If you would like to follow the Remembering You Oracle deck as it moves towards its first physical printing, you can join the print launch list through the link in the description. Take good care. Just notice what you notice this week. Trust your own inner knowing, and I'll see you next week.